I think there's a number of important things to bear in mind when you're putting together a group of people to do an economic evaluation project. And one of those things is about the range of skills that you've got and how many people you're going to need to actually provide those skills. And I think what we found in the 3 different places where we've been doing it is that in some places you might find more skills in one person, and in other places you might need a range of people. So, for example, in Herefordshire, we had just one person really trying to hold all the 3 main roles, which is a role which is around coordinating the whole project and managing the project. And then there's another role about doing the detailed data analysis and digging out all of the information and manipulating it and using spreadsheets and that kind of thing. And then there's a third role which is around stakeholder engagement, so somebody who's very comfortable and credible talking with very senior people at the council, for example, or senior people at businesses. So those 3 roles cover quite a range of skills.
If I was starting it from scratch now, I think you would need to have a really strong team of people, not necessarily a huge amount of people, but at least kind of 3 or 4 who had a really strong understanding of the reason why you wanted to undertake the work. Because until you've got that, you can't communicate it to other people really well. And so to have that strong understanding between you of why you need to do it or why you want to do it, and that kind of real passion for wanting to do it. And then the skills of those people are really important.
You certainly need people who understand entrepreneurial activity. Now, that could be from a standard business background, although of course that would have its constraints, because we need to be thinking out of the box here as well. So it needs to encompass a knowledge of the business community, chambers of commerce, the way that economic development people tend to think in strategic and policy terms. It needs to understand, standard traditional approaches to making money, but also social enterprises are an absolutely indispensable part of this picture, I think. Profit-making social enterprises. So I think that there are a lot of other business models there that you need to know something about. And then, so that's one skill set there. Another skill set is just knowing how to handle data, because in the economic evaluation work, there is going to be a lot of report reading. There is going to be delving into, electronic and maybe even paper archives related to your area. There's going to be lots of numbers. Somebody needs to know their way around Excel spreadsheets. And then I suppose the third thing is there needs to be the visionary component about how you can communicate something different from what is. So I'd point to those 3 things.
Cautious about, if I were advising someone about doing this process, is not to be overconfident. I think transition is full of people who are doers and go-getters and ready to jump in with both feet. Don't worry about it, I'll figure it out as we go. That might be able to see you through, but I think it's better to adequately prepare, make sure you have the funding in place and know what you're getting yourselves into, and adequately plan. Trying to do this in 2 months, probably not a good idea. Having 1 or 2 people kind of carry the whole load, probably not a good idea either. So don't bite off more than you can chew.
I think the main way a group will know they're ready to go is if they've got funding in place. I mean, it's really important that you have enough financial resource to pay people to do this work. We kind of agree collectively between all of us who've been doing it quite strongly that doing this work as a volunteer or a group of volunteers is really difficult, if not impossible, because it is quite a commitment to deliver quite a significant piece of work and to connect with a number of organisations and businesses. And you kind of need to have quite a strict project plan, and you need to have capacity, and you need to have the right skills that we were just talking about in place. So for me, getting that funding in place is a really, really important thing for the group. And by going through that process of getting the funding in place, in order to create the bid, you need to have thought through a lot about the approach to the project and the scope and the skills that you need and so on. So it's actually a really good exercise in thinking about the project and how you're going to run it and what you have to do, and then being able to articulate that in a bid to help unlock some funding to help you do that is a really good process. And I think once you've got those resources in place, the people and the money, and the clarity over what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, then you're ready to get started.
I think the last piece of advice I would give is begin with the end in mind. So if you've gone through the course, you sort of know what the steps in the process are. You know that at the end you're going to end up with a summary report and a plan. And what's that for? What are you going to do with it? Who are you going to show it to? I think if you think about that now, that'll really help you as you go through the process.
If I was starting off doing the economic blueprint work now and I was giving myself advice at the start, the main thing would be, or the starting point would be knowing what we wanted to communicate as a group at the end of the process, and who our audience would be for that report once we'd published it. The second thing I think would be that I would put equal importance on doing primary research as well as using data sets, because that brings people with you and means that when you've published a report, then you've got a critical mass of people who are working with you to deliver the outcomes. And the third thing would be to make sure that you've got a really strong group of people around you who are like the core team, who are really supportive of each other, and you can cry on each other's shoulders when it's not going as well as it could be.
Choose your companions well. Make sure you've got plenty of space on your hard drive. Clear your desk, and be very methodical about collecting information. Be very careful about the way you work one-to-one relationships, because it may be that one person who might possibly not be the greatest communicator in the world is the person who can help you the most. So it is about relationship building on the one-to-one level, and of course it's also about building group relationships, because ultimately that's what you really want to come out of this with, is a body of people who are prepared collectively to say this is really important and we're not going to let this work stay on the shelf.
There were three important things to bear in mind as you're doing this work. They would be, firstly, to make sure that you have some sort of stakeholder group, that you're not just doing this work alone as a transition town. This need to connect with other key local organisations, particularly the council, feels very important to the success of this work. Secondly, it would be to keep a really tight scope in mind for this, to be really clear on your research questions, to use the data sources that others have found useful, and to resist the urge to broaden your scope out and to bring too much into this. Keep it really focused on jobs, livelihoods and economics. And the third thing would be, in order to do those other two things well, you need to have resources in place. So make sure that you have the right skills and make sure that you have some financial support behind you. And if you have those three things together, then hopefully you'll get a good outcome.